Hello. I've decided not to grow potatoes in one of my raised beds this year. It's something I've done for the last few years, but obviously when you fill a bed with potatoes you can't grow anything else in that raised bed, and I've found that I can grow these quite successfully in buckets, and this year I've got myself some new bags, so I'm going to go for potatoes grown in buckets and bags solely this year, and that'll free that raised bed up for something else. But what I want to do today is I want to show you how I would normally plant up a raised bed, and I'm going to do that by cutting in some film that I shot last year and the year before, I think it was, and that'll show you a raised bed being planted up with potatoes. It'll show you an idea for some frost protection, and it'll show you what I would normally do with volunteers. Do you know what a volunteer is? Well, if you're a regular of this channel you probably will know what a volunteer is. If you're a gardener you'll know what a volunteer is. But if you're new to gardening you probably won't know what a volunteer is. So we'll get to that in a minute. But let me just move these potatoes off my raised bed. The homegrown veg props department has really pulled out all the stops for this video. Okay, this is my raised bed, 8 foot by 4 foot, 15 planting holes in a grid pattern already dug, equally spaced I might add, and that's to give every potato a chance to develop into a big potato plant so that they're not overcrowding one another. And I've found through experience that any more than 15 in an 8 foot by 4 foot raised bed is too many. I think it's too many. Okay, let me just bring these white pebbles into shot. And again, if you've seen my videos before you'll know what's coming, but if you haven't you'll be saying, what's he doing with those white pebbles? And I'll tell you as soon as I get them popped onto this raised bed. Okay, I've been for a walk this morning. Ho ho! It's a puss cutter. It's Baltic. I had to cut it short, honestly. It was so cold. So this isn't a job I'll be doing now. If I was going to put potatoes in this raised bed, I wouldn't be doing it right now. We're at least a month away and maybe 2 months away until this weather warms up. Right, what are these white pebbles all about? Well, when I cut you to that video, you'll see, but I'll give you a quick explanation now, and I'm fairly sure the video does the same, so it's a bit of repetition here, but hey, we've nothing else to do, have we? We're in lockdown. I'm stuck in a cold greenhouse now. Right, so let's get back to this. So what are these white pebbles for? Well, when we plant a potato in each of these planting holes and then cover them over, we've an idea where they are, but we don't know exactly where they are. So if we put a pebble on top, and we're not talking half a house brick here, we're talking a pebble. If we put a pebble on top, we know exactly where those potatoes are planted, don't we? We've marked the stations. Now I will say this, I don't think it shows you in this video, but what I did was I excavated all those planting holes before I started putting the potatoes in, and while I had the soil in buckets, I emptied the soil out from the planting holes into my barrow and incorporated some potato fertilizer into that soil, so that when I planted a potato and topped the hole off with the soil that came out of it, it now has some potato fertilizer in it. I'm not too sure if it shows that in the video, but that's what I did. Okay, so we've marked the station. We know where all the potatoes are. So what if there's a potato starts growing here? Nowhere near a white pebble. Or here. Or here. Well, I haven't planted those potatoes. At least not this year. I planted the plant that they came from last year. And when I've dug the potatoes up, I've missed them. So now what we have in the bed are some volunteers. They've volunteered to grow. I didn't want them to grow. I should have taken them out last year, but I missed them. Now then, what we don't know at this point is, have I missed a potato that big and it's started to grow? Or have I missed a potato that big and it's started to grow? And would either of these two potatoes, if they were left to grow on, produce a decent potato plant with potatoes on it? Anyway, so the decision I took at the time was I was going to lift the potatoes. I was going to take them out and do something with them. Watch the video and then come back to me. Hello. About 3 weeks ago I sowed 15 potatoes in this raised bed. It's still spring of the year here in the UK and we can always get a late frost. So what I did was I covered the bed with these spent mushroom crates, and I've got a rolled up tarp ready to go should there be a frost warning. What I didn't want to do was get these potatoes through and then to lose them to frost. Today at Homegrown Veg we're going to be planting our main crop, potatoes. Last year in this raised bed we grew 18 potatoes, 6 rows of 3. But it was a wee bit overcrowded, so this year we're dropping 1 row out and we're going to grow 15 potatoes, 5 rows of 3 potatoes. Okay, 15 equally spaced white pebbles. That's where we're going to be digging our planting holes. Now what we're going to do is we're going to excavate a hole. We're going to dig a hole where each of those pebbles are, and that's going to be a planting hole for a potato. Okay, let's dig some holes. Okay, so that planting hole is about 9 inches deep, and that's as deep as we want it. That's all the holes dug, all the planting holes. Right, this first row is going to be a short row of Maris Pear. You've seen it, you saw it earlier in the video. Vale Sovereign, Saxon, Sapomera, Sapomera. Okay, that's them all planted. Now let me tell you, we're in the middle of April here in the UK, and there is every danger that we could still get frosts. So I want to put some frost protection on this bed. so far so good, and the rain's kept off, so that's another bonus. We're going to get this job finished tonight. Just hold on. Whoa, what's that crept into the picture? That wasn't there a minute ago, was it? So that's job done. We'll have a look at under this tarp in 2 to 3 weeks' time. I'm going to take these crates off and see if we've got any potatoes breaking through. The white pebbles that you can see mark the position of the seed potatoes. I hope you can see this, but we have 2 potatoes that have broken the surface, but neither of those potatoes that I planted this year. Those potatoes are volunteers. Those potatoes were last year's potatoes that I must have missed when I harvested the potatoes from this bed. So what are we going to do? We've got 2 potatoes for nothing if we leave them. 2 potato plants. Well, I don't know if you recall, but when I made the original video planting these potatoes, I did say that I'd put 15 potatoes in this year, and that last year I'd put 18 potatoes in, and I'd reduced that by 3 because I thought the bed was a bit overcrowded. Now if all these 15 potatoes come through and I leave those 2 volunteers in there, perhaps this bed's going to be overcrowded again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove those volunteers. Let's do it. Okay, so as you can see, this volunteer is between these 2 potatoes in this short stitch. So if I dig this out, it shouldn't affect this seed potato under this stone, and it shouldn't affect the seed potato grown in that station. That's the theory. Let's excavate. Now, because I didn't plant this potato, I don't know what to expect here. It could be a small potato that started to grow. It could be a big potato. It could be as big as a cricket ball. It could be as small as a golf ball. I've no idea until we get this out. This is a bit like an archaeological dig. Oh, I can see the potato. Right. Okay. Now you might like to think of what we should do with this once I get it out, because I haven't quite decided. Here we go. There it is. You can see the potato. That's it. So we're going to put this to one side for the moment, and we're going to do the other volunteer. Okay, this one's between potato sets. Let's see what we've got here. That one, incidentally, the previous one is about as big as a golf ball. I can already see some roots here, so I think this one's fairly close to the surface as well. There it is. And that one's about as big as a marble. So had we let these two potatoes grow, they weren't likely to make much other than to help overcrowd the bed. So I'm glad we've taken them out. Right, what we're going to do with them? Well, first off, let's return this soil, and then we'll decide what we're going to do with these two guys. I think what we'll do, I've decided, because these guys have made the effort to make a potato plant, why don't we let them? Why don't we plant them together in a 10-inch pot and see what we get? Let's just put these seed potatoes to one side, these two volunteers, shall we? And I've got some soil. Okay. And I've got some grow more, which is a balanced fertilizer. Give that a mix. Okay. Right. We'll put 2 inches of that in the bottom of this bucket. 1, 2. I'm hoping to utilise this cut-off pop bottle to try and protect the top growth that we've already got on these two volunteers. I'm trying not to break it off. Let's see how that goes. Here we go. We'll slip this pop bottle over the top of a pair of them. And now we'll fill this bucket. Take this out. Shake this in. And I think what I noticed while I was doing this was that those two volunteers were both only about 2 to 4 inches below the surface. And that's why they've appeared before the seed potatoes that I planted, which were probably about 9 inches below the surface. Okay, all we need to do now is make a ticket for this, put it to one side and see if we get anything. If we get something, it's a bonus. If we don't get anything, we've lost nothing, have we? We started with nothing, we finished with nothing. But hopefully we might get a wee crop out of this pot. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. This is Homegrown Veg, signing out. Okay, So one thing we learned from that video, if nothing else, was that, just let me move these, this volunteer, a volunteer about this size, had sat in that bed since I dug the potato plant up that it grew on, and I removed all his brothers and sisters. They went indoors and we ate those. This one stayed in the ground. And this year, or the following year should I say, it volunteered to grow. So how long had that potato been in the ground? How long had it been in that, sitting in that raised bed, covered over by soil, about 4 inches down? Well, I reckon I harvested those potatoes probably in a summer month. So it certainly had all the autumn months in the raised bed and all the winter months in the raised bed. That's 6 months. And let's add a couple of months on, a spring month and a summer month. That's 8 months. That potato didn't start to grow for 8 months. It just sat in that bed. What does that tell you about potatoes? It tells you they have a natural period of dormancy, does it not? I didn't stop it growing, it stopped itself growing. And what stopped it? Its natural period of dormancy and the fact that we moved into the colder months. So it was dormant and it wasn't going to come back to life, so to speak, until it warmed up. And that would be the following spring, early summer. So potatoes have a natural period of dormancy for about 8 months. Why do we need sprout inhibitors when we send them to the shops? Didn't sprout for 8 months. These things naturally don't want to grow until the time is right. And when the time's right, that's when the soil's starting to warm up. We're in spring or we're moving into summer. The time's right. The dormancy's broken by the soil getting warmer and these things start to grow. So if you've got some sweet potatoes and you want them to chit up, chances are these potatoes have been out of the ground since last year. They've been out of the ground 7 or 8 months. They've been in cold store somewhere in the dark. You've now got them. Just put them somewhere warm. Put them somewhere warm. The natural dormancy will break after all those months and the warmth will encourage it. Your potatoes will chit up. Your potatoes will chit up. Okay, now, I know what you're asking now. What happened to those volunteers that I put in the bucket? How did they turn out? I would love to show you a result right now, but I can't, because they didn't thrive, they didn't flourish. They produced a potato plant, and I did turn the bucket out, but there was very few potatoes on it, most of them that size. So that wasn't worth doing. Okay, that wasn't worth doing, but it was an experiment. But what I'm going to do now is, I like to finish on a high. That was a bit of a low, expecting something from those small volunteers, but let's finish on a high. I found a volunteer growing in my onion bed, I think it was, and it was about as big as this, and it looked as though it would make a potato plant. But what I didn't want was potatoes growing in my onion bed, so I dug that one up and I planted that one, and I did get a result from a volunteer this big. I'm going to put a link on this raised bed that'll take you to a video. It's a start to finish video. You'll see me discover this volunteer, you'll see me move it into a bucket, and you'll see me get a harvest from that bucket. That's definitely worth a watch. Okay, and one other link I'll put on this raised bed is a link to a video that shows me harvesting potatoes from a raised bed. So these are potatoes that I've planted and then harvested. There'll probably be a weigh-in at the end of that video as well. So here are the two links as promised. This is Homegrown Veg, signing out.